Hello everyone, RJ from Vidhya Communication Enhancers is back again. Today we have one more interesting story. The day he realized he was practicing his future. At 7:30 pm, Aman finished dinner. He had nothing to do. That was usually where the problem began. He could study, he could work on the project he had been postponing, he could solve a problem, he could read, but none of those choices felt necessary. There was no deadline tonight. Nobody was watching him. So he picked up his phone. Just one episode. The decision felt harmless. One episode became two. Two became four. At 11:45 pm, Aman was no longer enjoying the show. He knew that he checked the time. I should stop, but he didn't. The next episode had already started. He continued. At 1:20 am, he finally closed the laptop. Then came the familiar feeling. Not exactly guilt, something worse. He knew he had done it again. He promised himself tomorrow will be different. He had made that promise so many times that even he no longer believed it. The next morning, Aman went to work. His manager called him into a meeting. There was a difficult technical problem. Aman listened. He understood part of it, but not enough to propose a solution. Another engineer, Samir, began asking questions. Why does this happen? What happens if we change this? Where does this data come from? What assumptions are we making here? Aman watched him. Samir was not dramatically smarter, but there was a difference. When Samir didn't understand something, he became curious. When Aman didn't understand something, he became uncomfortable. Samir moved toward confusion. Aman wanted to move away from it. Eventually, Samir found the issue. The manager said, "Excellent thinking." The meeting ended. Everyone returned to work. Nothing terrible had happened to Aman. Nobody insulted him. Nobody called him incompetent. That somehow made it hurt more because Aman knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted Samir's ability, not his job, not his praise, his mind, a mind that could sit inside uncertainty and keep digging. Aman returned to his desk. He told himself, I need to improve my thinking. That evening, he opened a difficult problem. 20 minutes later, he became stuck. He tried one approach, wrong, another, wrong. He stared at the screen, then his hand moved toward his phone almost automatically, and for the first time, he noticed the timing. He had not reached for the phone because he wanted entertainment. He had reached for it at the exact moment thinking became difficult. He froze. His hand was still holding the phone. Some, Something became painfully clear. Every time his brain said, I don't know what to do next, Aman had been answering, let's stop thinking again and again. and again for years. He put the phone down, he looked at the problem, then at the phone, then back at the problem, and suddenly he understood Samir. Maybe Samir had not been born with some extraordinary mind. Maybe Samir had not been born with some extraordinary mind. Maybe he had simply spent years being something Aman kept refusing to do. Staying, Aman thought about his own evening, thousands of hours. He had believed he was merely watching shows, but he had also been practicing something. Every bench was practice. Bored, escape. Confused, escape. Stressed, escape. Free, consume. Stuck, escape. His brain had learned the lesson perfectly. Aman whispered, I trained this. That realization hurt because it removed his favorite excuse. He could no longer say, this is just how my mind works. No, his mind was doing exactly what he had repeatedly taught it to do. He, his mind was doing exactly what he had repeatedly taught, taught it to do. Then another realization came. If he had trained escape through repetition, perhaps he could train something else through repetition. Not tonight, not through motivation, through the same boring mechanism that had created the problem. Practice. He returned to the difficult problem. 5 minutes later, the urge came again. Check your phone. He didn't. 10 minutes, still stuck. His mind started bargaining. You are not making progress. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe watch something and come back. Aman noticed something almost funny. His mind had never demanded progress from entertainment. It was willing to watch the 3 useless hours without complaint. But give a difficult problem 30 minutes without progress, and suddenly every minute had to be justified. He stayed. He did not solve the problem. At 10 p.m., he stopped. That was important. He didn't punish himself by working all night. He went to sleep. The next day, he returned again. He struggled again. Slowly, something began changing. Not his intelligence, his response. When he became confused, the phone still came to mind. But now another thought followed. This is the repetition that matters. So he stayed little longer. Weeks passed, then months. One day, another difficult issue appeared at the work. The meeting began. Aman didn't know the answer. The old discomfort appeared, but something unusual happened. He didn't panic. He asked, what exactly do we know? Someone answered, what are we assuming? Another answered, what changes immediately before the failure? They investigated. 20 minutes later, Aman noticed something, a small inconsistency. He followed it. There was a problem, the manager said. Good catch. The meeting continued. For everyone else, it was an ordinary sentence. For Aman, it wasn't. He knew where the question had come from. Not from motivational video, not from talent, not from one heroic night of work. It had been built during dozens of evenings when he became uncomfortable, wanted to escape, and stayed. That night, Aman came home. Dinner finished. Nothing urgent remained. The old trigger appeared. Free time. His hand almost reached for the phone. Then he stopped. For years, free time had meant finally I can consume. Now he saw it differently. Free time was only part of the day that nobody else owned. His employer once his employer owned certain hour, responsibility owned others, sleep needed its share, life consumed plenty, but those 2 hours they were his, and he had been handling them away because nobody forced him to protect them. He opened his laptop not because work was always more important than enjoyment, not because every minute had to be productive, but because tonight he knew what he wanted those two those 2 hours to become. He began, months become years. Aman still watched shows, sometimes too much. Sometimes he wasted an entire evening, but binge watching never felt completely automatic again because once his hand reached for the screen, he could hear the question underneath the action. What response am I practicing? Free, consume, stuck, escape, free, build, stuck, investigate. He finally understood something he wished he had understood years earlier. You do not become a deep thinker when an important problem arrives. You arrive at the important problem with the mind you have been practicing every ordinary day. If every small difficulty teaches you to escape, you cannot suddenly demand depth from yourself. And when life becomes difficult, if if every free hour automatically becomes consumption, you cannot be surprised when years pass and your ability remain where you left them. The mind remember repetition. So Aman stopped waiting to become a different person before behaving differently. He reversed it. He behaved differently so repetition could slowly create the person he wanted to become. And whenever he began whenever he became stuck and his hand automatically moved toward his phone, he remembered Samir in that meeting. Then one sentence came to him. This is where my old mind used to live. He put the phone down, pulled the problem closer, and added, this is where the new one stays. If you want one line from this story to imprint, I would choose the last two. This is where my old mind used to live. This is where the new one stays. Especially use it at the exact moment you are stuck, not after you have already binged for 2 hours. So, with this, we are ending today's story. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.